Welcome to Buckets, coming to you from the Tommy John Home Studios. My name's Matt Moore, and this is your Friday Best Bets episode for January 17th in the association. We'll give you best bets. We've got props, we've got sides, we've got totals, we've got lots of stuff to give you for a great Friday in the association. Glad you're with us. Hope you've had a great week. Hope you've had a profitable week. Hope you're looking to get more of the green check marks in the Action Network app, which is the best way for you to track your picks. You get up-to-second information on where the bets and money are coming in on. You got all sorts of cool stuff in there, lots of great stuff. Make sure to check out our YouTube page at youtube.com/The Action Network. Lots of great shows. We'll be doing more NBA stuff as football wraps up. But in the meantime, you got the favorites. You've got the Sunday six-pack. You've got Brandon Anderson's Best Bets episodes. You got all this stuff. I'm going to be doing a Super Bowl show. I'm very excited. It's going to be great. So check all of that out at the youtube.com/The Action Network page for more from us. Hope you guys are doing well. Join me tonight. I got Bryan Fonseca. He's on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Bryan Fonseca NY and in the Action Network app. Also, new addition. We got a new guy. I'm so excited. We haven't had a new guy in a while. Brandon Kravitz, who you can find as the radio pre- and post-game host for your Orlando Magic and Orlando Sports Talk host. Sports Talk host. Brandon Kravitz, welcome to the show, man.
This is a damn fever dream. What is happening? I have been religiously listening to this show and following all of you. Basically, since if I could put a date to it, it was around the time the Celtics and the Warriors met in the NBA Finals is when I think you guys really hooked your teeth in. So applaud all of you for all of the wins that you've helped me secure over the years, and now I hope that I can just return the favor to that loyal audience of yours.
We're glad to have Brandon on with us. We got another Brandon. We'll have Brandon and Brandon at some point, I'm sure. It's great to have him. Also, nice that he's like I've been with you since the Celtics and Warriors series, which you and Brandon completely fucking failed to cap correctly because we were both like absolutely whiffed on that. It was one of our worst caps. We were like, no, the Celtics are gonna do it. And Simon Hunter from the favorites was like, they are not going to do it. You are betting against Steph Curry. What are you doing? Yeah. Sure enough, Simon came out ahead on that one. All right, let's get to this. But before we do that, I put in a feature on the Action Network app, and I wanted to talk about this because I sent Raheem Palmer, friend of the show and Ringer gambling show host, and Brandon Anderson this like long text thing because I was just like in my brain about it. We talked on Sunday about the bracket and the Boston Celtics, and if you'll recall, if you're listening every night on Sunday's show for Monday, I said, like, we got to wait for the bracket. We got to wait for the bracket. Yeah, I lasted 5 days, and then I saw a plus 110 on the Boston Celtics to win the Eastern Conference at DraftKings, and I jumped all over it. And the reason is because when I kind of looked, I was looking at the whole thing. I was looking at the board, and the big thing for me is that as it stands right now, we talked about this, as the board is right now, Orlando's in the other side of the bracket. And if do I think Orlando is going up or down? And I'm like, they're probably going to stay 4-5. I think they can do well enough to put some heat on the Knicks, but not enough for them to overtake them. And if I don't think, and we're going to talk about Orlando because they're facing Boston, if they're not going to get past the 4th seed and they're going to be on that side of the bracket, that means Boston doesn't have to play them, which means I instantly like that side. So what I did was I did the exactas that I like to do, and I took Celtics on one side to win the East, Nuggets to win the Western Conference at plus 600. This is like a high point for OKC. And if I think about OKC, Brian, and like how good they've been, they smashed the Cavs tonight. Everything's going great for them. I'm just a little worried that OKC might be that Utah Jazz team from 2021, or the Phoenix Sun team from 2022, or the Atlanta Hawks team from 2015. There's enough for me to worry about it that I think there's value on Celtics, Nuggets, which is not the expected matchup, at a number around 1071. Actually, it's 1371, the number I got it at. So not a bad number for me on that, but I added that to my portfolio tonight. What do you think, Brian?
We talked however many weeks ago it was about Western Conference futures and futures in general. And I remember saying, and we agreed on this, like if you're going to look beyond OKC in the Western Conference, we sort of highlighted Dallas. Now, this is before they got super banged up. So you actually could get them at a better number now, but they're at the point where it's like you kind of just want to wait and see if they get healthy, a little healthy first, maybe closer to when Luka comes back and is not on the scooter. And then you have Memphis, who has also struggled with health this year, but they've been deep enough to where they've stayed afloat, more than afloat. They're third in the Western Conference right now. And Denver is interesting. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of adding to the roster between now and the trade deadline. This is more of a viewpoint, if anything. But something that I've been saying is identifying front offices that are going to make a move or try to make a move, be aggressive before the trade deadline. Trade deadline's in 3 weeks. Denver is going to be looking around. Memphis is going to be looking around. Dallas, I don't know what they're going to be able to do, but they're going to be looking around. And if you're looking for challengers to OKC, it kind of starts with me there, because Houston, I still think, and not that they're playing like they're just happy to be there, but from a playoff standpoint, we haven't even seen them get into the postseason yet. We'll see if they hold on to the second seed. I think for them, it would take a lot for me to be like, yeah, let me take the Rockets in their first playoff run with this core group and then just run through the West. It doesn't even sound right. And I don't think they'd beat OKC anyway. And then you have like the Clippers, for example. I just don't think they're going to have enough. Same thing with the Lakers. And going on down the list, like, yeah, I mean, to me, Denver's a good one, as you mentioned. And I would still identify like Dallas and Memphis, barring anything crazy happening at the trade deadline, because I mean, the Kings have sort of turned this around to some degree, but I'm not going to be there on the Kings. It's like too big brained of a long shot for me. And Minnesota, I mean, we'll talk about Julius Randle later in a positive sense, maybe. But I hated that trade for them from a does it bring you closer to a championship now standpoint. I like the getting off the Cat deal long term, although Cat's been awesome this year and might be an all-star starter. But like, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for spots to fade OKC, that's kind of it. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know if they'll be the Jazz from a couple years ago, because they do have some playoff experience and they have some guys, but I don't think, like, some people think that they're unbeatable, and I'm not there from a playoff sense. Right. Like, I still want them to add a shooter. I still want them to get healthy on the front court, for example. So we have to see those things materialize a little bit more.
Agreed. Brandon, I think for my big question for you is just, am I underestimating Orlando here? Because the only thing that I keep going back to is that we had a beautiful 2 weeks where the Magic had Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero and a fully healthy roster, and the offense actually looked like a functioning unit. And then we've seen Paolo gets hurt, they go in the mud. Franz gets hurt, and they go in the gutter. And it's basically been there pretty consistently, to the point where I'm like, maybe this is who they are, and the early stuff wasn't real. I'm not counting out Orlando's chances of making a run, because I love the defense, the versatility, the lineup optionality, and Paolo and Franz. Now that Franz is back to being, he's gotten over whatever the shooting stuff was last year. They are 4 games back in the loss column from the Knicks. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a little bit to make up when you're winning at this kind of race. And I do think that the Knicks are going to be a pretty good regular season team. Am I wrong in that estimation? Because if we get the Celtics in the Magic side of the bracket, this bet to me loses a ton of value. But based off of the perception, I want to go ahead and grab it relative to kind of how it's shaping up. What are your thoughts on the Magic's ability to get into Boston's bracket?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is with the Magic, we just don't really know what this team actually looks like. It was that limited sample size at the start of the season. Last year, it felt like they were that team that was just excited to be there. So they were out there hustling on every game and kind of sneaking up on teams. Obviously, that was going to change coming into this season, but you only got 5 games with the full allotment of Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs. And since then, you've just had different amalgamations of this group. Now you have Paolo back. He's not even all the way back. He hasn't played more than 27 minutes yet. Franz should be back around the corner. So, I'm not copping out of the answer, but the truth is we just don't really know what this group looks like off the heels of a 7-game series against the Cavs last year. I do think, and I'll reserve some of this because it's built into the cap for one of my best bets for tonight, is that they are sort of built to be the foil to the Boston Celtics. And so I'm with you. I think your thought process is right. A lot of people would hear that and go, why in the world is he that scared of the Orlando Magic? It's not that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that you think the Magic are going to go and win the NBA Finals. It's that they're dangerous enough and built to a point to knock out Boston. And that point I agree with. Their record against the Boston Celtics, the last 7 times they've played, the Magic are 5-2 against this basketball team. They're built to stop them. So I think if they get there, the problem is Milwaukee's heating up right now. The Knicks don't seem to be going anywhere. So, and same thing with Cleveland, obviously. So it looks like you might be able to avoid it, but if they end up in the same side, I understand the trepidation.
But I'm also like, I mean, this is good for me because I'll just build up a massive Celtics position that I will then, not voluntarily or from any sort of intelligent land, just hedge against because I'm so bought in on this idea that Orlando can upset Boston. It's not even, and I want to be clear on this, it's for me with Orlando, it's not like I wouldn't make the Magic's favorites in that series. I wouldn't be like, oh man, this is a coin flip. The number one team in the NBA in preventing three-point attempts, the team with the lowest opponent three-point rate is the Orlando Magic at 37.9. The next one is Houston at 39.7. The number one thing, the step one on everything, don't let them get them up. Just don't let them get them up. A lot of what Boston's going through right now is quite honestly just like they are shooting 46 to 53s and not making them. Now, I think that their approach of hoping that they were going to stay in an ungodly shooting rhythm for 24 months was probably a little bit overly optimistic, and they got to find ways to kind of recalibrate. That's part of the reason I wanted to bet them tonight is I don't know if this is a low point. They may lose more games. They may lose this one to the Magic, right? And you'd be able to get a better price the further that Cleveland goes. But for me, eventually the Celtics will probably have a come to Jesus where they're like, okay, the threes are great and they're part of our identity and that's central to us. We also have to defend. Like, we have to be able to get stops. We can't just math these teams. I also think that's one of the things that Joe Mazzulla is going through right now. Is I think Joe has been like, I believe in the math, I believe in these numbers, we'll just do this. But he's leaned so far into the bit that it's like you have no balance. And they got to reconfigure that.
And how much of that is just the coasting aspect of winning a championship and a team knowing that we got there once and we can wait to put our pedal to the metal, and maybe we do see them change. It's just going to be at a different time in the year. And right now, frankly, on the body, in terms of just the overall motor, it's easier to just stop and jack threes and go about 75% on defense.
The question I think you kind of got to get to there is, do you believe that things like them being 7th in defense versus 2nd, what's the difference there? Like, do you look at that kind of a drop and go like, well, yeah, but I mean, it's just like a couple of percentage points and it's totally fine. Or if you're like me, you go, look, if you were a top 3 defense, you were elite. You were one of the best defenses in the NBA and you can lock down anybody. If you were 7th, you're still a really great defense and very capable of winning an NBA championship. But you're not elite. And that takes you out of, and one of the reasons I've hesitated to bet them was because the market has consistently been like, no, this team's still, this is exactly like last year's team. And I'm like, last year was number 1 offense, number 2 defense. This is number 2 offense, because they are really good at shooting them threes, and number 7 offense. Really good team. They have the 2nd best net rating in the NBA, schedule adjusted. But there's stuff under the hood that I'm like, a little bit interesting. And we'll see where it goes. Maybe they get better. Maybe they get worse. Maybe I'm ahead of the market. Maybe I'm behind. We'll see how that goes.
Is there a deadline deal that Orlando can strike to make them more legitimately appetizing to get into this top tier of Eastern Conference teams?
Yes, but I just don't know where their front office is at in terms of wanting to move certain guys. Like, I think Gary Harris, like, they're willing to part with. They talked to Phoenix about some stuff that would have involved Grayson Allen, and the Suns trying to offload Nurk, but it didn't go far enough, and that's why Phoenix pivoted to the Nick Richards deal. And everyone that I've talked to, that I don't have anybody in Orlando, but everybody I've talked to that has tried to kind of poke around Orlando has found a surprising reluctance for them to part with any of the bigs. So they're like, oh, surely you want to move one of Wendell Carter Jr. or Jonathan Isaac or Goga Batadze or before he was hurt or Mo Wagner. And the answer was kind of like, not, I mean, we'll talk about it, but not really interested. And so that's been kind of surprising to me.
You know, the funny part about that is that entering the season, that was a big conversation of why do you have all these guys? There's no way you can get them on the floor. Every single one of them has started multiple games at this point, so it's good that they had that the depth there, and I think that probably is just confirmation bias for them if they were already feeling that way. I would nominate someone like Cam Johnson with the Brooklyn Nets. If they get somebody that is a consistent three-point shooter that doesn't take away too much from the defensive effort of this team, because if they're going to win at any level, they have to keep up the level of defense that they play. That's the hallmark of the squad. I think a rangy three-point shooter, someone like that, could help them stay afloat. But I just don't see this front office. I agree with Matt. I don't see them getting aggressive at the deadline. I think they like the pieces they have.
They have that Cam Johnson deal is everybody's kicked the tire. Like that's the one that Brooklyn very wisely. Like that's why that's one of the reasons I think Brooklyn was like, yeah, sure, Dennis Schroeder for whatever. Yeah, fine. I'll get DFS, sure, bon voyage, no problem. Because like Memphis, Golden State, Dallas, Orlando. This one, I've heard OKC.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Real interest. And
they got the picks.
They have the picks.
They have all the picks.
That's got to be terrifying. If you're in the Western Conference and you're just like, sweet Jesus, please no. Please no. You already got Alex Caruso. Don't just sit there and add, like, don't consolidate into Cam Johnson, who's got playoff experience, but we'll see. All right, let's do some best bets. It's important for us to get on the way. We'll go around the horn. Brandon, you just say your best bet, and then we'll go around. Let's start with Bryan Fonseca. What are your best bets for Friday in the association?
Julius Randle over 19.5 points at Madison Square Garden.
Okay. You also have a lean towards
the Denver Nuggets if Nikola Jokic is healthy. If.
Gotta get Denver Nuggets on the money line. Okay. Yeah. Brandon Kravitz, what are your best bets for Friday?
Yeah, I'm interested to break that one down. I had my eye on it. Magic plus 12.5. I'm not going to take them on every pod, but it's the first one I'm on. Come on. And Victor Wembanyama over 3.5 blocks, juiced at minus 165.
Okay. I've got the Minnesota Timberwolves and New York Knicks over at 220.5. I like the Orlando Magic plus 12.5. And I like the Los Angeles Lakers lay in the wood minus 11.5 versus the Brooklyn Nets on Friday. Let's start with Knicks and Wolves, Brian, since you've got to play on it and I've got to play on it. I'll give my cap real quick on the total here. So this is the Wolves tend to go under on the road, so that's not a great start for me at 48%. But Knicks games are 55% to the over in their home games. I make this 225, so I've got separation on it. The other thing is that with the way the Wolves defend, Rudy's going to drop. Rudy does not want to see a stretch five. He hates those things. So even if they try and switch and move him around onto Josh Hart to try and keep them a little bit more maneuverable, Cat's still going to be able to take, OG Anunoby, whoever, and he'll be able to get enough separation to get up his points. I think that even if Jalen Brunson's banged up and misses this one, I'm not necessarily worried about it because the Knicks still have enough firepower. Wolves are still a really good defense, but not necessarily like they're still top 5, so they're very, very good. Their offense, though, relies so much on 3-point shots that's one thing I think you can kind of get up versus this Knicks team with how they overhelp. Not a lot of trust internally from the Knicks in terms of if you watch them, they overhelp quite a bit because they're trying to cover for Cat, they're trying to cover for Jalen. Like last year is a lot of like letting your guys stay on an island. They overhelp a little bit now. Which opens up those kind of opportunities. And so I like the Wolves here to put up some points. Maybe not get the win, but I do like the over at 225 in this one between the Knicks and the Wolves. You think that this is a revenge spot game, a J-Money hashtag revenge spot. You like Randle to get his buckets returning to the Garden.
You remember what he did last time he played the Knicks in a regular season? He went... His over-under, I think, was also 19.5 or something along those lines. In the first half, he had 21 points. He shot 7 of 14. And then the only reason he didn't go beyond 24 points is because they were getting their ass whooped by so much
So bad
that they just sat everyone in the fourth quarter. Otherwise, Julius Randle could have had a 30 ball. And I just think, you are who you are. And I've seen a lot of Julius Randle basketball here in New York over the last several years. And I mean, I don't see much of an adjustment. Like, this is one I'm willing to be wrong on, but this is just straight up. And he's gotten the over in 2 of the last 4 and 13 plus shots in each of his last 4 games. Like, we could do the technical, like, just bare bones stats of it all, but like, I don't give a shit about that. This is Julius Randle back in New York City. He's gonna get a tribute video. He's gonna try to put on a show, so to speak. Like, I'd be stunned if we're at the end of the first quarter and he puts up like 1 or 2 shots. Open to being wrong, but like, I think Julius Randle is going to be Julius Randle and put up a bunch of shots. And maybe it's inefficient, maybe it isn't. He'll probably get to the free throw line a fair amount. And Karl-Anthony Towns is not going to be there. So, I mean, he's going to look at Jericho Sims' food as well, if he does get Jericho Sims on some switches. He's also pretty big for the rest of the Knicks front court. And you mentioned the overhelping. Like, I gave PRA a look because the Knicks do overhelp a good amount on their centers. Like, there's been a lot of different times against the Bulls, for example, where Zach LaVine off a pick and roll will hit Nikola Vucevic by the free throw line. Karl-Anthony Towns is there, and OG Anunoby's like, uh-oh, I need to go help. And then Vucevic tosses it to Kobe White, open 3-point shot in the corner. Like, we'll probably see some of that too. So I don't hate PRA either, but I'm going to just take the straight up points with Julius Randle because, I mean, how could you not?
Do we think that I want to ask, who do we think wins this game? Just wins. I just need like a lean on who we think wins this game.
The Knicks.
Okay.
I actually put a little sprinkle on Randle over Knicks money line.
Okay. I was going to ask that because Brandon, what do you think?
I would lean the Timberwolves. I had a really hard time with this one. The Knicks are 2-2 without Cat this season. It's not a large sample size, but the 2 wins are not impressive. They beat the Nets by 2, and the Sixers took them to overtime.
Yes, sir.
So I'm a little bit worried about that. I like the way Minnesota's been trending the last few games.
If this was in Minnesota, I would take the Timberwolves. That's what I would say.
He's questionable. He might play.
Who's questionable?
Towns.
It's a sprained thumb. He's day to day.
If Towns plays, I change my mind.
Yeah.
Is he going to miss a game versus the Wolves?
That's a good point.
Dante DiVincenzo's out. If Dante DiVincenzo played, then I would have destroyed his over. Are you kidding me? After that preseason game?
Over Knicks money line 20. Oh, yeah. Over Knicks money line, Julius 20 plus points. It's plus 415.
Let's go.
Oh,
3
that's
leg
nice.
at 415. That's your.
I mean, once that ball hits Julius Randle's hands, it's not leaving.
I would be so
pissed.
Hits
the rim.
I would be so pissed if he takes 2 shots in the first quarter. I'm like, this is not why we're here, Julius. We're here to watch you put up 15 shots in the first half again.
Can I get first quarter points? Is that a thing I can do?
It might not be out yet, but it'll be out.
It'll be out, yeah. I would definitely say throw that in as well.
It'll be like
Smart.
5.5, maybe something like that.
All right,
4.5.
let's get to the big one. Orlando Magic taking on the Boston Celtics, and I think this is actually a really big game. Line's 12.5. So one of the reasons that I didn't really like, I probably shouldn't have. I feel okay about betting them because I got a 110 at DraftKings. But look at this line. The Boston Celtics are minus 12.5 here. Minus 12. They just lost to the Toronto Raptors. And granted, the Celtics are dynamite off of a loss in terms of straight up. So I get it from a certain perspective. But this is such a wild power rating to put this at 12.5 for these two teams with no major adjustments. Goga's out. Suggs is out with the lower back strain. Franz is still out. But everybody else is Harris is still out. But the other guys are still here, good to go. And we know the Magic just kind of play the same way night after night after night. And there's always the chance that the Celtics are going to hear the noise and finally be like, all right, now we're going to beat this team and beat the pants off of them. Brandon, since you're the new guy and you're the pre- and post-game host of the Orlando Magic on their radio network, I'll let you go ahead and give the cap for why you want the Orlando Magic plus 12.5.
Yeah, the numbers stood out to me like a sore thumb. I really didn't want to be on the Magic on my first episode with you guys because then this just becomes the brand. But whatever, it is what it is. We want winners. I mean, the Magic were 6-point underdogs at Milwaukee, and now we're jumping 6.5 points. It feels a little extreme here. Obviously, they got blown out. Maybe that's part of it. But I love this matchup for the Magic. It hit me a couple of weeks back, and it's part of what we've already discussed here. But the Magic are built to be the Boston antidote here. Boston wants to jack up a bunch of threes, and that's exactly what Orlando does well. They limit attempts, and they limit percentage. So these are two things that Boston does not like. The Magic, for as good as they are defensively, they're not a good paint defense. Look at what happened to them when they went up against Giannis. But that's not an issue against the Celtics because they have zero interest scoring around the basket. They're 29th in paint points scored per game. This team is just perfectly equipped to make Boston uncomfortable. 5-2 against them straight up in their last 7. This is a diminished Magic team just based on the injuries, but we get a nice bloated number. Orlando is not coasting like Boston is. These guys play every night like it's the Sweet 16, and Boston has been a terrible cover at home, 27th in the league. So I'll take the Magic plus 12.5 as my first bet on buckets.
All right. Jamal Mosley in his career versus the Boston Celtics, 5-6 straight up, 7-4 against the spread. He has covered in 7 of his last 10 games. He has covered against the Boston Celtics. So like that part, this is definitely the extremely movable object and the very resistible force. So this Magic, we've talked about this a lot, that they've struggled on the road. They're a little bit better this year. They're just like a normal, not great road team versus last year when it was an abomination. When we had that stretch where they lost like 15 in a row on the road. 43% on the road, ATS, not great. Bryan Fonseca, take a wild guess at what the Boston Celtics home ATS record is this season.
Oh, I just looked this up and I forgot. It's not good, though.
33%. They are 33% at home ATS. That is shocking to me. I
was a year early on my criticism of them, apparently.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that's nervous about how bad that number is, though.
Yeah, it's like surely this will turn around, right? Because it's like they're not over at home. That's always the thing I think about with these trends is I'm like, they're not over. But
also, it's halfway through the season, though. I mean,
yeah, and I'll just say this: like I've been fading them at home and betting them on the road, and then like last night was not a spot. I didn't bet them last night, but last night was not a bet to bet them on the road. They lost versus the Raptors, but it's been pretty consistent. If the Celtics rattle off 5 in a row at home ATS, I'll notice it and I'll change. I'll get off that trend.
Right.
Like you're right. For me, a lot of it in the in-season trends is you ride the trend until it shakes. So right, that's incorrect. If you like the spot, use the trend as another reason to make it a bet for you. And then when it breaks, use it as a reason not to go in it. Because it's like, all right, we had this trend, it's shifted. But I do think consistently that the Celtics have not been accurately power rated. They have not been a great ATS team. I've looked at this the other night on BetStream. It's wild. OKC, Cleveland, and Memphis are in the top 5 in point differential. All of them have a +3 ATS margin or better. So the market's still behind them, no matter how good they are. The Knicks, as of Tuesday night, were a 0.0. The Celtics were a slight negative because the market is ahead on those teams. And we see this again with this Orlando team. Like this number, even with Franz out, even with Goga out, who, by the way, Goga's amazing. Even with all that those guys out, even with Suggs out, this number is just flat out disrespectful to how good Orlando is. 12.5? Come on now.
They were covering these numbers without Paolo.
I know.
Right.
Finally, the last thing I would say is the last time, again, this Boston Celtics team, they got to get their threes up. They just need to get them up in order to win. This Magic team is the only team I've seen that consistently can do this. They can actually limit their attempts. They don't let them take them. And the Boston Celtics want to be like, fine, then we'll attack you at the rim with our slips and ISOs. And most teams do get shredded by that because the Celtics are really good The Orlando Magic are the rare team that's like, have fun. We are more physical. We are quicker. Our rotations are perfect. You're not going to take threes. You have to make tough twos. Have at it. That to me is a recipe for a cover here, Brian, at 12.5.
Yeah, I'm following on this one because also just Boston at home, as you outlined, this is a half season sample size now. This isn't just, hey, we're in November, they're off to a rough start. Like, this is a thing. And Orlando feels like, just as much as anybody in the league, where regardless of who's out there, they're going to come to work and perform a certain way, which is a lot to do with coaching, which is a lot to do with preparation, which is a lot to do with just the focus on executing. And I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say like the math is catching up to Boston, but like Orlando is one of the teams that, regardless of who's out there, is kind of built to exploit that to some degree because they can drag anyone into the mud and into their style of play. And with Paolo back, now they have more options offensively that I'm fascinated to see like how they play off of him. Are they going to have enough shooting and all those kinds of things? And 12.5 is just a lot. Like, I still think we're disrespecting Orlando a little bit. Like, I'm still in my head playing with the idea of, hey, to your point earlier, I don't think they're going to catch the Knicks at 3, but if Tibbs runs more guys into the ground, it's on the table because Orlando has remained afloat with all their injuries. They've had as bad of injury luck as any like good team in the Eastern Conference outside of, I guess, the Sixers. But I thought Orlando was better coming into the season anyway.
All right. Brandon, I already like you coming on the show because you have a prop, you have a side play and a prop play, and you're not giving me an obscure second forward. Not bringing Yabusele into the fold here for a prop play. You've got Wemby over 3.5 blocks, which he cruised over in the last matchup between these two teams. Why are you going back to the well with Wemby versus the Grizzlies at over 3.5 blocks?
Yeah, I can't say that all of my prop bets are going to be this mainstream, but not going to have a lot of Yabusele props either, so somewhere in the middle. But
that's a shot at me, by the way. Just
it's a shot.
I was on Max Christie yesterday, and it didn't even work out. But that's another story for another day.
Waka.
I just like it started as a narrative read, and then the numbers backed it up. If I could bet that Wemby is going to have a block that makes all of our jaws drop, that he has a block that goes into the 7th row, I would bet that, but that's not available anywhere. And this would be in direct response to Ja Morant posterizing him on a play, gentlemen, that didn't even count. And ESPN was showing this thing on a loop like it was a game-winning drive on the Super Bowl. So that would be the play, but such a wager is not available. So we're going to take the over on blocks. And there's a reason why Wemby went to work the other night against this team. 8 blocks. Their shot frequency around the basket. The Grizzlies are number 1 in the league at taking shots between 4 and 14 feet away from the rim. And the thing I've noticed when I've watched Wemby is it's not as much his rim protection. It's it's like the aura around the rim area that just anywhere you shoot the ball from, his arms are long enough and he's quick enough to make up ground and block shots from this haloed area. So I don't think the Grizzlies completely adjust their offense in the way they play just so that Wemby doesn't get up a big shot blocking total. And Wembanyama, this is gut check time, Wemby. You got to be out for blood after you got embarrassed on a play that didn't even count.
I love it. I love it. Because I'll just say this. Ja's coming for him again. Ja's absolutely going to try and do it to him again. He will just try and kill him every single time. That's like it's how Ja is wired. And so, yeah, it should be. I was on the best stream for that game and I screamed out loud. When that dunk happened.
I think this is when we get to know. We haven't seen this moment yet for Victor, where you meet this level of almost like Ja Morant tried to little bro him.
Yeah.
Not just in the dunk, but in what he said in the postgame, because Ja can never help himself. And he said, yeah, he's just another guy. If Wemby's if he's going to be as great as we have projected him to be, this has to be a game where he goes nuts, and I think it's on defense.
All right, we'll see if he can get it done on defense with over 3.5 blocks in this one. My final one, I like the Los Angeles Lakers versus your Brooklyn Nets. Look, I don't, when these games happen, like the Clippers one, where they get annihilated, I'm very sympathetic to the players. It sucks to be on that end of it. They get the deal. They understand the assignment, et cetera, in terms of the management. Like there were guys that played when they came to Denver, and I saw them up close. And like I like some of these guys. I think it's pretty evident how obsessed I am about the NBA and how much I talk about it and how much I think about it. And there were guys I had to fucking Google during the game because I was like, who is this human being I am watching play basketball? And like, Tyrese Martin, pretty good. Never heard of him before. Not once. Learned who Tyrese Martin was in Denver. They have a bunch of guys that are playing like that. The Lakers are always looking for these kind of, and the Heat game was a good step. They've been good this season overall. Like, it feels like they haven't been, but this season at home, they're 58% against the spread. Nets have been good on the road, but that's before they started these kind of maneuvers with where they're getting at. So I make this game 14.5, which I think is probably accurate. And if you're like, that seems steep for the Lakers, like, are you going to say that the Celtics can't lay 12.5, but to the Magic without a bunch of guys, but the Lakers get the lay? Yeah, because the Lakers are playing the type of team that they beat up. Like, this is the type of team that they beat up on. And when they lose these games, it's more representative of how they're not connected. I think they'll be connected in this one, coming off of a pretty feel-good win. I'll lay the 11.5. Don't mind laying the wood here. And that will do it for Buckets. Brandon Kravitz is on. Wemby over 3.5 blocks. The Orlando Magic plus 12.5. Bryan Fonseca likes Julius Randle over 19.5 points. I like the Wolves-Knicks over. I'm with Brandon on the Boston Celtics, or the Orlando Magic rather, plus 12.5. I like the Lakers at minus 11.5. One lean here. Brian, okay, you want Joker. We're assuming this 2.5 line is Joker's not playing.
Yeah.
If Joker plays, because he is questionable with an elbow sprain, he heard it in warm-ups. If he plays, and this goes to, let's see. Let's do the number here. So Heater 2.5, this would jump to approximately Nuggets minus 4 is where this would go.
Whew.
Would you want Denver? He's a 6-pointer. He is the only guy in the league that I think you have to take 6. His my spread value on him is 6, and he has DeAndre is a flat 0 in terms of replacement value. Love DeAndre Jordan, best guy in the locker room to talk to. The man's been around a while. So, with that said, are you at 4? Do you still want Joker? Let's say I'm wrong and it's 2. If it's Denver 2, I assume you want Denver.
Yes. 4, I'll hesitate. I might still do it. Like, Jokic, including the NBA Finals, is like 18-6 in his career against the Heat.
He killed him.
Yeah, he destroys that team regardless of who's out there. The Heat have lost, if I'm doing my math correctly, 13 of their last 14 games against Denver. Something along those lines is something ridiculous, and this looks like it's including the NBA Finals, which is their only win against Denver since 2020, if I have that right. So, if I'm wrong, blame Stat.
Yeah, you're right. Since 2000, oh my God.
It's been a long-running thing that Miami doesn't win in Denver, but they also don't win that much against them at home either.
They've won 14 of 15 versus the Heat.
And we should mention, because it's taken... This is the longest we've gone without mentioning Jimmy Butler on Buckets in a while, at least when I'm here.
Yeah,
Jimmy Butler's supposed to be back. He's not on the injury report. He's going to play.
Welcome back, buddy.
Yeah.
That makes me want to take the Nuggets even more.
This is my thinking. It's like I know the Heat are the team that responds to adversity, but I think that was the previous incarnation of them probably a couple years ago.
I just love the idea of there being a big banner, welcome back, welcome home, Jimmy, in the locker room for him.
They're debuting the new Vice jerseys also. Vice uniforms.
Now I don't want to bet against them. I don't want to bet against them in the Vice jerseys.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're playing in them tomorrow, but they're supposed
showing them.
Yeah, but they're supposed to wear them, I think, for 10 games. Apparently this was pre-planned that they were going to roll this out around now, and the Jimmy thing didn't deter them. They stood headstrong, whatever the term is. And I don't think headfast is the term there. That would be weird. I think we're going off the rails here at the end. I think that with Joker, if it's at 3.5, I'm on Denver. And obviously if it's at 2.5. If it's at 4.5, I mean, I'll hesitate a little bit, but man, he destroys that team. And I'll look at Joker props, obviously, because he's the ultimate problem solver against that zone defense that Miami likes to play. So
since 2003,
this will be good.
Eastern Conference teams coming off of a Western Conference road trip of more than 3 games are 48% against the spread. That's a huge sample too. So that kind of balances out the lack of a clear margin here. It's 48.5%, but it's across like over 1,000 games.
I thought it'd be worse.
Yeah, Jay's always on it. Jay always like. Here's the thing: is it's an old adage, and I just kind of wonder if it's been priced into the market, right? Like, I'll do some more research for it, and we'll talk about it next week on the mixtape. This is the mixtape episode, so we'll do that next week. We'll talk a little bit about teams coming off of the East Coast road trips. I'll make a note to do that. All right, that's gonna do it for buckets. So, I do want to make a note. We're gonna do a MLK Day preview because there's games all day. And we're working on details for a pretty exciting live show for you. And it might be Sunday, but it might not be till next week. I would tell you to check Twitter for Action Network and Buckets, and for me at HB Basketball, and we'll get you updated. If not, we'll have a full preview for you on Sunday or on Monday morning for the games. But there's a good possibility we'll be having a very cool live show, but you gotta be on the lookout for it because we're putting it together. So be on the lookout for that. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the NFL games. Cash all your bets. Follow Brandon Anderson. Follow Sean Kerner. Follow Chris Raybon. Follow the favorites. Do all that. Follow Bryan Fonseca NY in the Action Network app. Brandon, are you in the app yet?
I am. At Brandon Kravitz _ is how you can find me.
Let's go. Brandon Kravitz _ in the Action Network app. We'll see you guys again on Monday. Thanks for joining us. Till then, let's get buckets.